Greatness has a hidden cost. Will you dare to pay it? What if I told you that greatness doesn't happen by accident, not even close? That behind every legendary figure, every name etched in history, every person you admire for their brilliance, influence, or legacy, there's a cost most people never see, and even fewer are willing to pay. We love the outcome of greatness, the applause, the rewards, the admiration. But we rarely talk about what it takes, from the nights of isolation, the rejection, the ridicule, the endless friction between who you are and who you're trying to become. Greatness always demands a sacrifice, and the deeper question, the one that separates those who chase fantasies from those who forge reality, is this: are you willing to pay the price? You see, we live in a world obsessed with achievement but allergic to cost. We scroll past highlight reels, success stories, and motivational quotes, never asking what was left behind on the road to mastery. The truth is, greatness is not given, it is extracted. It is ripped from the hands of comfort and stitched together with choices no one else sees. It's not about talent. It's not even about luck. It's about the willingness to endure the invisible tolls, the ones that can't be captured in a photo or summarized in a tweet. Let's start with the first and most misunderstood cost: loneliness. Nobody talks about how lonely the path to greatness feels. Not the kind of loneliness where no one's around, but the kind where no one understands. You make decisions that others can't relate to. You say no to things that everyone else says yes to. You wake up before the world, not because it's trendy, but because your mission won't let you sleep in. And slowly you begin to see the distance grow between you and your old friends, between you and your past self, between you and the version of life that was good enough. That gap, it's the cost of elevation. And if you don't understand that this isolation is part of the process, not a flaw in it, you'll sabotage yourself just to feel close to the crowd again. But ask yourself this: is the crowd your compass? Or is your vision? Because if you're trying to do something uncommon, you must become someone uncommon. And that requires walking away from the familiar, from the applause of the average, from the comfort of being understood. That's the first toll. The sacrifice of belonging for the sake of becoming.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The second cost is doubt, and not just from others, from yourself. The deeper you go into your journey, the less you recognize yourself. You'll wrestle with whether you're even still the same person. You'll question your motives, your methods, your meaning. The world will praise you one day and ignore you the next. You'll pour everything into your work, and it still won't be enough for them or for you. You'll hit plateaus that feel like dead ends. You'll be tempted to quit 1,000 times, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And in those moments, you'll realize that greatness doesn't just require strength, it requires the capacity to suffer with purpose. Most people don't fail because they're not good enough. They fail because they didn't expect it to hurt this much. They didn't expect to lose people, to outgrow environments, to be misunderstood, criticized, or ignored. They thought greatness was a gift. It's not. It's a transaction. You give up certainty, comfort, and validation, and in return, you get growth, depth, and legacy. But only after you've paid the price up front. And here's the third cost, the one that breaks most people: identity death. Because in order to become great, you must let go of the person you were, the one who needed approval, the one who played small to stay safe. the one who is afraid to offend, to lead, to dominate. That version of you cannot survive the journey to brilliance. He must be buried. And that's terrifying. Because most people are more loyal to their past than they are to their potential. They'd rather stay in character than grow into power. But you can't become something new while clinging to who you used to be. So here's the real question: are you willing to let go of who you are to become who you're meant to be? Because that's the hidden cost of greatness. It's not the grind. It's not the hustle. It's the internal death and rebirth that no one claps for. No one posts about it. No one celebrates it. But it's the most essential part of the journey. The willingness to shed your old identity like skin, to walk naked through the fire of transformation, and to emerge not perfect, but forged. You will lose people. You will lose comfort. You will lose certainty. But what you gain: clarity, power, truth, depth that cannot be traded for anything else in this world. So before we go further, I want to ask you something you may not have asked yourself in a long time. What are you willing to give up for who you could become? And more importantly, what are you still clinging to that's keeping you from answering that call? Because the path to greatness is open, but only for those who understand that it always comes with a price. The price of fire, what you must burn to rise. There's a reason so many people dream of greatness, but vanish when it comes time to rise. It's because greatness is not built on what you add to your life. It's built on what you're willing to burn. It's a fire, not a gentle one, but an unrelenting blaze that consumes everything false, everything weak, everything unnecessary. And most people don't want the fire, they want the light. They want the glow of success, the warmth of admiration. But they don't want the part where everything safe and small inside them has to be set on fire. That's the price of rising. That's the price of becoming something true. We are conditioned to believe that growth is glamorous, that you climb the ladder, collect wisdom, stack achievements, and eventually arrive at some enlightened version of yourself. But that's not how real transformation works. Real growth is destruction. It's a demolition job. It's tearing down your mental walls brick by brick, burning the scripts you were handed by society, and questioning every belief that made you feel normal. Because the truth is, what the world calls normal is often just undeveloped. And to rise, you have to let go of everything that keeps you comfortably below your potential. What has to burn? Let's start with your approval addiction. That quiet craving we all carry to be liked, accepted, validated by others. You cannot serve your mission and serve their comfort at the same time. You cannot lead and still need to be liked by everyone. Approval is a leash, and as long as you're on it, you'll never run free. You'll second-guess your ideas, your instincts, your voice. You'll dim your vision to fit their expectations. You'll apologize for your ambition, and slowly, without even realizing it, you'll become harmless, not in a noble way, but in a forgettable way. So ask yourself, how much of your life is shaped by the fear of disapproval? And then ask, what would happen if you burned that fear down completely? Next, you must incinerate your need for certainty. So many of us are addicted to control. We want guarantees. If I do this, I'll succeed. If I say this, they'll like me. If I follow this plan, it will work. But greatness doesn't come with a map. It comes with a flame, a vision, a pull towards something that hasn't been built yet. And it demands that you move forward without knowing, that you leap without seeing the net, that you risk failure, embarrassment, rejection not once, but again and again. Until you realize that the only real certainty is you, your persistence, your grit, your refusal to quit. That's the only guarantee. Everything else is smoke. And here's the most painful part: you must burn your old story. The story that says you're not ready. The story that says you're too broken, too late, too different. The story that was written for you by fear, by trauma, by people who never dared to dream. And that story is a cage. And no matter how many goals you chase, if you're still living inside that narrative, you will sabotage every step forward. Because your identity always wins. So, if your identity is built on limitation, you will find a way to stay small, even if the world gives you a throne. You have to rewrite yourself, not from ego but from truth. You have to declare who you are becoming before the world believes it. You have to act like the future version of yourself before anyone claps. And that means letting the old version burn completely, without nostalgia, without trying to save a piece of who you were. Because you can't walk into the fire carrying dead weight. You have to choose your comfort zone or your calling. And here's the twist: the fire doesn't just destroy, it frees. It clears the path. It burns away the noise. It reveals what is real. That's why so many people avoid it. Because once the illusions are gone, you can't lie to yourself anymore. You can't pretend to be a victim. You can't blame your past. You either rise or you don't. And that kind of clarity is terrifying, but it's also liberating. Because once you've walked through the fire, no one can take what you become. Not critics, not fear, not failure. You've already burned for it. So let me ask you something you may not have asked before. What are you still protecting that needs to burn? What old identity, fear, or relationship is standing between you and your next level? And if you knew that the only way to go higher was to let it go, would you? Because fire doesn't ask for permission. It only asks for fuel. The weight of glory, why most people collapse under their own potential. There's a quiet tragedy playing out in the world right now. Millions of people, full of potential, silently buckling under the very thing they once dreamed of. Not because they weren't capable, not because the opportunity wasn't there, but because they were never taught how to carry it. That's the hidden paradox of greatness. It's not just about reaching the top, it's about staying sane when you get there. Because glory, for all its shine, is heavy. And most people are not crushed by failure, they're crushed by the weight of their own becoming. We're told to chase our potential like it's a treasure chest. Unlock it, and everything will be perfect. But potential is not a gift, it's a responsibility. It's a mirror that shows you everything you could be and everything you're not yet. And that reflection can be paralyzing, because potential doesn't applaud you. It accuses you. It whispers, you're not trying hard enough. You're not living full out. You're playing small. And the deeper you lean into your calling, the louder that voice becomes. Until eventually, you either rise to meet it or shrink to escape it. This is why so many people sabotage their own success. Not because they don't want it, but because they don't believe they deserve it. They get a taste of momentum, and then they pull back. They build something real, and then they burn it down. Not consciously, but through delay, distraction, doubt. Why? Because deep down, they've never resolved their internal war between who they are and who they're becoming. And if you don't do that work, if you don't make peace with your worth, you will always find a way to outrun your own greatness. But let's go even deeper, because this isn't just about fear. It's about identity conflict. We all carry an image of ourselves, who we are, how we're seen, what we're allowed to become. And when your life starts expanding faster than your identity can keep up, you experience internal whiplash. You start asking, is this really me? Can I actually hold this? What if I lose it? What if I don't know how to lead at this level? And instead of expanding into the new version of yourself, you retreat to the old one. Not because it's better, but because it's familiar. Most people don't lack capacity, they lack alignment. Their outer world is trying to scale, but their inner world is still stuck in survival. They're trying to lead like visionaries, but thinking like victims. They're trying to make bold moves while carrying shame, self-doubt, and the need for permission. That's not a strategy, that's a collapse waiting to happen. Because the higher you rise, the more exposed you become. And if your inner foundation isn't solid, the weight of visibility, responsibility, and influence will crack you open from the inside. So what's the answer? You must build the container before you pour the glory in. You must do the inner work that matches your outer ambition. That means confronting your self-worth issues. That means healing the parts of you that still believe you have something to prove. That means upgrading your emotional stamina so that success doesn't feel like suffocation. Because here's the truth, glory is not light. It's a crown made of iron, and if you haven't strengthened your neck, it will break you. That's why we see so many people reach the top and implode. Not because they weren't talented, but because they were never trained to carry the pressure. And you can't outsource that. You have to become the kind of person who can hold what you're asking for. That's the real work. The invisible training, the psychological reps, the emotional weightlifting. That's what makes the difference between those who burn out and those who burn brighter. So ask yourself this and answer with brutal honesty. If the life you dreamed of showed up tomorrow, could you carry it? Could you lead it? Could you sustain it without collapsing? And if the answer is no, then the mission is clear. Don't chase more, become more. The weight of glory is real, but so is your ability to bear it if you're willing to do the work. Because in the end, greatness doesn't just test your skills, it tests your structure. And if you want to last, you must be as strong inside as you are impressive outside. The final toll, why those who rise must die again to be reborn, there is one last cost. But the one nobody talks about, because it's too uncomfortable, too unsettling, too real. It's not the pain of the climb or the pressure of success, it's the death that comes after you rise. Because if you truly want to achieve greatness, you don't just pay once. You pay again and again. At every level, the invoice returns. And the currency is always the same, pieces of the person you used to be. This is the final toll. The inevitable moment when, even after reaching a peak, you realize you must die again, not physically, but psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And most people, after the first death, refuse to go through it a second time. So they plateau, they settle, they protect what they built instead of evolving into who they must become next. Here's the devastating truth. Every level of growth demands a new version of you. And that means killing the old one, not gently, not slowly, but fully, without nostalgia, without clinging. The identity that got you here is not the one that will carry you forward. And for many, that's unbearable, because we all crave stability. We want to reach a point where we can finally rest, finally say, "I made it." But the real ones, the visionaries, the leaders, the legends they know, there is no finish line. There is only the next evolution, and that means constant rebirth, a constant shedding, constant surrender. The hardest thing to let go of isn't failure, it's success. Because once you've built something that works, something that people admire and depend on, the idea of walking away from it, even if it no longer fits, feels insane. But that's what greatness requires. The courage to leave comfort for calling, and to walk away from applause for alignment, to burn the throne you built if it no longer serves your future. That's not recklessness. That's integrity. That's listening to the deeper voice inside you, the one that whispers, "This isn't it. Not anymore." And so many people ignore that voice. They stay in relationships, careers, platforms, and positions that feel safe but secretly suffocate them. They hold on to identities that no longer reflect their truth. They become prisoners of their own legacy, and they tell themselves it's loyalty. But it's not. It's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of losing relevance. And fear of facing the void again. But the void is where all real transformation begins. And unless you return to it willingly, deliberately, you will stagnate in a golden cage of your own making. The hardest thing to let go of isn't failure, it's success. Because once you've built something that works, something that people admire and depend on, the idea of walking away from it, even if it no longer fits, feels insane. But that's what greatness requires. The courage to leave comfort for calling, and to walk away from applause for alignment, to burn the throne you built if it no longer serves your future. That's not recklessness. That's integrity. That's listening to the deeper voice inside you, the one that whispers, "This isn't it. Not anymore." And so many people ignore that voice. They stay in relationships, careers, platforms, and positions that feel safe but secretly suffocate them. They hold on to identities that no longer reflect their truth. They become prisoners of their own legacy, and they tell themselves it's loyalty. But it's not. It's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of losing relevance. And fear of facing the void again. But the void is where all real transformation begins. And unless you return to it willingly, deliberately, you will stagnate in a golden cage of your own making. The hardest thing to let go of isn't failure, it's success. Because once you've built something that works, something that people admire and depend on, the idea of walking away from it, even if it no longer fits, feels insane. But that's what greatness requires. The courage to leave comfort for calling, and to walk away from applause for alignment, to burn the throne you built if it no longer serves your future. That's not recklessness. That's integrity. That's listening to the deeper voice inside you, the one that whispers, "This isn't it. Not anymore." And so many people ignore that voice. They stay in relationships, careers, platforms, and positions that feel safe but secretly suffocate them. They hold on to identities that no longer reflect their truth. They become prisoners of their own legacy, and they tell themselves it's loyalty. But it's not. It's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of losing relevance. And fear of facing the void again. But the void is where all real transformation begins. And unless you return to it willingly, deliberately, you will stagnate in a golden cage of your own making. The hardest thing to let go of isn't failure, it's success. Because once you've built something that works, something that people admire and depend on, the idea of walking away from it, even if it no longer fits, feels insane. But that's what greatness requires. The courage to leave comfort for calling, and to walk away from applause for alignment, to burn the throne you built if it no longer serves your future. That's not recklessness. That's integrity. That's listening to the deeper voice inside you, the one that whispers, "This isn't it. Not anymore." And so many people ignore that voice. They stay in relationships, careers, platforms, and positions that feel safe but secretly suffocate them. They hold on to identities that no longer reflect their truth. They become prisoners of their own legacy, and they tell themselves it's loyalty. But it's not. It's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of losing relevance. And fear of facing the void again. But the void is where all real transformation begins. And unless you return to it willingly, deliberately, you will stagnate in a golden cage of your own making. The hardest thing to let go of isn't failure, it's success. Because once you've built something that works, something that people admire and depend on, the idea of walking away from it, even if it no longer fits, feels insane. But that's what greatness requires. The courage to leave comfort for calling, and to walk away from applause for alignment, to burn the throne you built if it no longer serves your future. That's not recklessness. That's integrity. That's listening to the deeper voice inside you, the one that whispers, "This isn't it. Not anymore." And so many people ignore that voice. They stay in relationships, careers, platforms, and positions that feel safe but secretly suffocate them. They hold on to identities that no longer reflect their truth. They become prisoners of their own legacy, and they tell themselves it's loyalty. But it's not. It's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of losing relevance. And fear of facing the void again. But the void is where all real transformation begins. And unless you return to it willingly, deliberately, you will stagnate in a golden cage of your own making. So here's the final question. Are you willing to die again? Not just once. Not just for the first breakthrough. But every time life calls you into something higher. Every time your soul outgrows your shell. Every time the next version of you starts knocking at the walls of who you currently are. Will you answer? Or will you cling to what you've already built, hoping it lasts forever? Because nothing great lasts forever unless it evolves. Trees shed their leaves to survive the winter. Snakes shed their skin to keep growing. Stars collapse to become something even more powerful. This is the rhythm of nature, of existence, or of excellence. And you are not exempt. So let's be real. If you want to live a life that matters, if you want to leave a mark, create impact, and stretch the edge of what's possible for you, then you must become a master of letting go. You must fall in love with the cycle of death and rebirth. You must expect it, welcome it. Learn to walk into the fire with your eyes wide open, knowing that on the other side is not destruction, but reinvention. This is the hidden cost of greatness. Not just the pain at the beginning, but the pain that never truly ends. The cost of constantly letting yourself go in order to meet the person you were always meant to become. But here's the reward. When you live this way, you don't just become successful. You become limitless. Because the person who's not afraid to die is the only one who's truly alive.